Likkutei Torah, Parshas Eikev, page 26. Second column, 8 lines from the end of the page. Okay, after that, the Rebbe is explaining Neshamas of Zera Adam, Zera Behema. He says that a person needs to be Mizbeinin the way all the highest levels, Gan Eden, higher Gan Eden, all that is only a ray of the Shekhinah. And therefore he can imagine the distance of the Neshama, which comes actually from Mamish, a part of Hashem, and now the Neshama comes down into the lowest of worlds. So therefore that itself should awaken the Rachmanis on himself of the realization that how far the Neshama is. So he says now, 8 lines from the end of the page. 3, 6, 8. Okay, when you meditate into this, everybody according to the level of a person knowing who he really is. A person's supposed to really know who there is. Like this is where we ended off yesterday. The cardinal sin of capital punishment is when a Jew doesn't know who they are. Whether they think they're better than they are, which usually happens, or they think they're lower than they are, which is also equally sinful. So he says, when you sit down and make a cheshbon, who you really are, and he says, you'll awaken a tremendous mercy. You say it in this tremendous feeling, the way the person's in the ultimate lowness. And he's far from Hashem in the ultimate level. So what happens when you have that Rachmanis on yourself? And then this becomes Tichtches HaMesim, which is the Tchias HaMesim. There's going to be Tal through the level of the dew that Hashem's going to resurrect the dead with, like it says, Kital Eres Talech, which is the level of the dew. The not of Mipum Adatik that comes from the level of Atik. In other words, like we learned many times, rain, whether rain comes or not, is dependent of the Eden keep Torah mitzvahs. In this week's parsha, we say V'hayim Shemaya. So we say if you keep mitzvahs, you'll get rain. You won't get mitzvahs, Hashem will hold back the rain. But the Gemara says Ta'alei Natzah. Dew never stops. So Chassidus explains why not. Because rain comes from a level of Elokus where behavior is effective. Where behavior affects. So therefore you don't behave, you don't get. You don't behave, you don't get. Tal comes to the level of Atik, which is the essence of Hashem. That level, that behavior doesn't matter. So he says when a person, what awakens that level of Tal within the person, that level, the level of Rachmanis, when a person has pity on himself of how low they are, that itself awakens mercy. And the lower you realize you are, the more mercy you're going to awaken on yourself. And he says, V'chaya chayim ein tzav baruch hu. V'nigol kved Hashem, it will be so revealed. Ad shafilu b'mokum shoyemat mizeh chayis. That until now, a place that had minimal level of elokus. V'kiyam ya'edu v'yalu l'mayla. That level itself of ultimate lowness will become elevated v'yalu l'mayla. They'll be elevated lichol be'echad. To become one with Hashem, like the bittul of a candle in the presence of a torch. In other words, bottom line, he says, when you have this level, then you awaken the level of Tal, the level of Mon, the level of Tchias HaMesim. Imam become resurrected. And simply means everybody will be gathered from all the places they are, but represents even within the person themselves. Like we said many times, the person is torn, they're being torn in 10 million different directions. So you become united by your days, and through this, a person through that level of Rachmanis, that awakens that level of Tal, can awaken within himself lahachis mesim, to resurrect the dead. And Chassidus explains what's the spiritual aspect of tchias mesim in a personal way. So he said there's nothing colder than intellect. Intellect is like ice. And when you put life into seichel, meaning the midas liven up the seichel, that's called tchias mesim. It's called the resurrection of the dead. Minei sheyidnish shebem kisted the chiyusa. V'kol chamam is the same way. Yechaya adam es nafshi. A person should give life to his nefesh. Or a surah which is bound, ukshur and tied, ba'havli elam, in the foolishness of world, v'nechshav is kames. And therefore he'll be considered like a dead person. Why? Like it said, vayitein es rishoyim kivrei, and the Chazal say, rishoyim b'chayim kru yemesim. A Rosh, even when he's alive, is considered dead. Why? Because he's not getting his existence from Elokus. He's getting existence from Klippa. And therefore, Tchias HaMesim is, you put Kedusha into that level of Ra, V'afilu Chai Shebehem Kames Nechshav. Even that Chayis, which is considered dead, Aidei Yiseiris B'chinas Rachmim Rabim Mulmayla. By awakening mercy from above, then you'll gather the life from all parts of the body, which is even minimal, kissed a very slight amount of chayis, back to its source, and then you'll actually resurrect the dead. So what's the bottom line over here? Bottom line in practical sense is, the Alter Rebbe says a person needs to know who they really are. And by the way, it's interesting. The greater the person, the more they feel how low they are. Yeah. People that don't realize they're low are not great. Because the greater person, like we said many times, you come Yom Kippur to shul, who should be crying the most? The people that sin a whole year. They should be crying the most. They sinned. The great tzaddikim, they're the ones that are crying. They don't sin. What are they crying about? Because they realize if they're not to their level of potential, if they're not where they should be, so they're lacking. They're distant from Hashem. And they realize that as great as a person is, and the neshama in the body is still limited, far from Hashem because of the body. He says, now, how do you reveal? What brings down this Rachmim Rabban, the resurrection do to awaken you?
Is this a story about Teshuvah?
This is Tshuva. Tshuva means returning to Hashem. Returning to Hashem means if you're there, you don't have to return seemingly. You don't have to return home if you're home. When you say I have to return home means I'm not home and I have to return there. So the level of tshuva is returning to this level of elokus. Now, the more a person realistically, between him in the mirror, and Hashem, realizes how much nothing they are. Not, God forbid, I'm a nothing, therefore I can't do anything. Compared to what I should be, I'm a nothing. Not that I'm no good. That's also anti-Jewish. A person needs to know exactly who they are. So why because compared to what I should be, I'm very far. Right? So, the level of concept of tshuva is returning to Hashem. And based on what the Alter Rebbe is saying here, it explains what it means. Even tzaddikim have to do tshuva. Because even a tzaddik is still far from Hashem. Yes.
Is the Alter Rebbe hinting that resurrection of death is really not going to happen? It's all spiritual?
No. Tchias HaMesim is going to be physical. He's talking about now, present day, personal Tchias HaMesim is resurrecting the dead of Seichel, or the deadness of worldly affairs, the wanting worldly things. No, but the Tchias HaMesim, nobody says is not going to be real. It's interesting, the Rambam, in the whole Rambam, basically doesn't talk anywhere about Tchias HaMesim. He doesn't talk about Tchias HaMesim at all. Even when he speaks about Mashiach, he doesn't talk about Tchias HaMesim. Huh? Yeah. He doesn't talk about Tchias HaMesim. But there's in Rambam, he doesn't talk about it. But there's in one of the Rambam's letters, which is printed also in Igros Rambam, the Rambam has the Igros Tchias HaMesim. But in Rambam, he doesn't talk about it.
Why not?
I don't know, ask him. Because Rambam holds the ultimate is not Tchias HaMesim, whatever. Okay, so he says this, Amshacha v'rachmim Rab. In other words, he says like this. What the Rebbe is saying, when a person has Rachmanis on himself, that awakens Rachmanis from above. That's what he's saying, right? So he says, how is that? Yugim o midas hainu. Shelefnei, lefi, shem rachmim rabim beligvol. Because Yud Gimel midas rachmim. Our infinite rachmim, it's impossible to permeate and dress itself into limited worlds. In other words, like this. We're talking about a person awakening the tal of Tchias HaMesim, which is, he said, the level of all the way up there. Rachmim Rabim. Now, that level of Rachmim Rabim is totally infinite. In order for that Rachmim Rabim from above to come into the person, which is limited, it has to go through the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim. Because as great as the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim are, there's still 13. The 13 attributes of mercy. He says, that are given a limitation, that the world are able to handle it. Okay, skip 4 or 5 lines.
The same Morit HaTah is higher than Mashi Baruch Morit HaGeshem.
Yeah. Doers never occurs.
So the tefillot that we say in the summer is higher than the tefillot that we say in the winter?
No, not necessarily.
The same Morit HaTah?
No. That's a praise of Hashem and Meir Atol. It's not asking for tal. It's a praising Hashem. And that praise is great in Meir Atol. That's why, in Nusach Ashkenaz they don't say the words Meir Atol. In winter they say Mashu V'Roch Meir Geshem, and in summer they don't say Meir Atol. They just don't say Mashu V'Roch. But halachically, if somebody said Meir Atol instead of Mashu V'Roch, they don't have to repeat the Shemon Esrei. If they left it out, they have to repeat the Shemon Esrei. Because Tal has an it Geshem plus. But I know what is the Gimel Midas HaRachmim. Now the Alter Rebbe says like this: the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim correspond with 12 Shvatim and Shevet Levi. Hakelu Kulam, that includes all of them. Lochein Eimrim Slichas for Yud Gimel Midas. Oh, this is for you. Hello. Therefore, we say Slichas in Yud Gimel from Rosh Chodesh Elul Ve'elach.
1 month.
From Rosh Chodesh, Sha'azuz Manna Seiris. The Alter Rebbe in Likkutei says a lot of things that we say that we don't say. No, the Rebbe points this out in many places. Even though the Alter Rebbe says, like you say, Mitzvah Shabbos, Am Hashem L'Yaakov, so but we don't say it. Whatever. Now, because when is Chodesh Rachmim? When is Melech Basada? Melech Basada is in the month of Elul. So that's the Eibishter's close. So then it's easier to bring down Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. In your great mercy, with your mishpatim, you give me life, meaning through this love of Rachmim Rabim, Nim Shechayis Kolkach, comes down chayis to such a low extent. Remember, he said before, even that part of the body where there's very minimal blood, so to speak, it also revives it. Like we say, so that level comes down all the way down. This is what the pasuk says. Avram, we didn't know Yisrael yakirenu. We don't know the level of Yisrael. Ata vaya avinu. Pirush ki avaya avinu is the level of rachamecha harabim. Like he said before, lochein eimin b'aseres yimei tshuva avinu malkeinu. Therefore, we say avinu malkeinu. Why do we say avinu malkeinu? That's higher than the level of avei seheinin and merkava. Because the Avis are only Avinu. Now we're saying Avinu Malkeinu, which is both aspects together. Ushmi Havai Eloinei Daitu Lehem. Pirish Shelo Yelo HaYolem Yediyah V'Schabes. B'Shem Havai Avinu, because that's the level of Rachmim Rabim that they didn't have yet before Matan Torah. Matan Torah accomplished at the level of Anechi, the essence of Hashem comes down. That means then you're shaykh to bring down the Rachmim Rabim that goes through the Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim to the level of being Machaya the person, resurrecting the person. That's another interesting thing. When would the Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim revealed? After the Egel. Before the Egel, there was no Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. On the contrary, Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim starts with Havaya Hashem Kol Rachum. By Avram El Shmiya V'Ayu Lo Yinei Daitu Lehem. The others didn't know the name Yudkei Vavkei, because Yudkei Vavkei is the attribute of Rachmim. Kel is Chesed, Elokim is Gevurah, Yudkei Vavkei is Tiferes. That level of Rachmim they didn't know.
Was not necessary.
They didn't need to know it. Therefore, it says about the mon. Shu atal b'lechinas rachmim rabim asher leyodon avisecha. By the mon in this week's parsha, the pasuk says, "I'm going to give you the mon that your forefathers didn't know," because that level of tal, which is connected to the mon, had no shaykhs to the others. They didn't even know Havaya. Shlo yalavis yediyah bay. Leman hediyacha, to let us know, ki lo yalalachem levad. Yichya, a person doesn't live on bread alone, meaning al derech mashamer azal. Kol ha'emer ein li al Torah. If a guy says, I only have Torah, I don't need tefillah, I don't need mitzvahs, I don't need whatever. The Gemara says, afilu Torah ein li. He doesn't even have Torah. Why? Ki lei bazeh yichya adam. Because if you don't have the midas, then it says, what do you mean, leyichya adam? Okay, what do you mean, yichya adam? Adam ilah shal dmusa kesei. Okay? In other words, like this. Now I'm going to read a line to explain it. Al derech ma'amer azal, the Gemara says, Yisrael mefanis and navim shebeshamayim. The Eden give parnasa to Hashem. Remember we learned in a lot of the different Maimorim. Karbanis are called lachmi, my bread, my food, Hashem says. What do you mean the Eden give parnasa to Hashem? The Gemara says, Yisrael mefanis and navim shebeshamayim. The Eden give parnasa to Hashem. What does sustenance mean, basically? That you're alive, food. Food to eat, money to buy food to eat, to live. So what's the purpose of food? Food is to keep the neshama in the body. You go on a hunger strike, you don't eat for a week, God forbid, you're going to die. Or whatever it is. You're going to die. What does food do? The concept of food is keeping the neshama in the body. What keeps Hashem in the world? Food. The Jews feed kaviyachol. You saw, the Gemara says it's not the finest in Lavim. They give parnasa. They give sustenance to Hashem. Yeah, oh, right. But I'm saying he's quoting this from the Gemara. So what does it mean when Yidden? And he says like this: Kol ha'omer ein li ela Torah, afilu Torah ein li. You want to keep Hashem in the world, Torah is not enough, because Torah can go into klipa. If you learn Torah the wrong way, without bittul, you're going to go into klipa. He says, Allah kol meitze pi'ani meaning. Aide is bain, and the shemas kol ha-misbainin. U'misbain, a person meditates. Shatera in meitze pi havaya. The Torah is Hashem's words. V'dibur is shel mokem v'reis kol shebrichu kol echad. And Torah and Hashem are all one. See, now he says like this. Kilay al lechem levada yichya adam. Simply means, again, like we learned last night, a person doesn't live on bread alone, he lives in the power of Hashem that's in the food, right? And the whole thing. Here the Rebbe is defining it like this. Kilay al lechem levada yichya adam. Bread, Torah is called bread. Luchu lachmu belachmi. Torah in the psukim is called bread. The pasuk says like this: Kilei ala lechem levadei, not from Torah alone. Yichya ha'adam, Adam she'ala kisei. Can Hashem live? Meaning, can Hashem be in the world? Torah itself is not going to. What does he need to do? Meaning, what does it mean? Pi Hashem. The person realizes that the whole world and Torah is only Pi Hashem. There's no him, there's no world, there's no Torah. It's only Elokus. So in order to give parnasa to Hashem, kaviyachol, that Hashem, you're feeding him, that Hashem should want to stay in the world because that's what he decided, that's what he wants. So a person has to realize it's made to be a nice and a Torah. It's Hashem's Torah. And that's why Chazal say, Kol ha'esik b'Torah. Gemara says, whoever occupies himself in Torah properly, Tal Torah mechayehu. The dew of Torah gives him life. That's the level of Tal. But what is that from? Like you said before, meditating into Rachmim Rabim, which is the bittul to realize how far we are away from Hashem. That is what awakens that level of Tal to give us life. But if a guy says they only have Torah, I mean there's no bittul, there's no tefillah which represents bittul, there's no mitzvahs meaning bringing Torah into bittul of living your life according to Torah, so then it's not Tal Torah. Forget it, and the opposite. You're lowering it into Shalosh K'tzatmeis. Shubachin is Sefer, Ashin is Gash, and basic Gash Mitzal is Sefer B'diyai. But Torah, the greatness of Hashem is that this infinite level of Torah, which is again not only the level of wisdom, that it's Hashem's toy, meaning the essence of Hashem, lowers itself to come even into written letters, ink and parchment, which you can't have more limitation than that. And that's what the pasuk continues. To let you know, Kaidei Haman. What does the pasuk say? To make you know and know, das, feel, that in order to keep Hashem in the world, you can't just have Torah. You need the level of bittul, shezehu b'chinas tal, which is the level of tal. That level of kedusha, the others didn't even know. Afal Pikain. Nevertheless, the pasuk says Vayachilcha Saman. What does it mean Vayachilcha? Shenizgashim, it becomes Torah, lowers itself to such an extent that you grind it in the grinder. Right? You take wheat and grind it in the grinder to make bread. What's he doubt ever saying over here? Torah comes down from the level of Tal Torah, which is the highest level of Torah, Torah, that level of Torah comes down in a way that a person's grubber, coarse, mundane, low-life brain understands Torah. You grind it, Torah has to be digested like food, right? You grind up Torah in a way that it can come into the physical, limited, warped brain that all of us have. But a person, in order for that to work, they need to realize that this that grounded up and came into their brain is not their doing. I understand, it's Elokus. Mizat Tovin in Torah. Then we can understand what the real aspect of Torah is. Shemei Tzipi Hashem, it's the word of Hashem. It actually yardom in Slavju, but it came down. And in fact, Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Alter Rebbe quotes another Gemara, B'makom shatamei tzigdu, about Torah. He's B'makom shatamei tzigdu l'aseh shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In a place where you see Hashem's greatness, meaning the level of Torah all the way up there, Sham atameitza and Vasanuse, there you see his humility, as Alter Rebbe says in Perek Dalet, that you lower Torah, coming down all the way down into the human brain. That means Hashem is so great, He could take a level of Tal Torah and grind it up that every, again, warped, whatever, brainless brain, can understand it. But what's the danger involved? If you think Ein li ala Torah, then it's no good, because then it goes into Klippa. And that gives life to Adam Elyon, that gives life to the Eibishter, the Adam Shalem Merkava, that keeps Elukus in the world. Okay? Benito.
It's all up to us.
Everything's up to us.